A hard-working waitress named Emily is humiliated by a wealthy, arrogant customer named Victor. As he leaves, she notices frantic messages on his phone and a briefcase filled with cash, revealing he's in deep trouble. Two shadowy figures enter the diner, cornering Victor and trapping Emily and the other customers in a dangerous situation. Please comment where you are watching us from, and don't forget to click subscribe and turn on notifications. It was supposed to be just another late-night shift for Emily, the young waitress working double hours to pay for her mother's medical bills. But when a wealthy businessman walked in and decided to make her his target, humiliation turned into something far darker. What no one inside that diner knew was that within minutes, the tables would turn in a way no one could have imagined. Emily had been working at Rosie's Diner for nearly 3 years. It wasn't glamorous, but paid just enough to help keep her family afloat. The small-town diner was a place where truckers, travelers, and locals stopped by for coffee and conversation. Emily knew most of them by name, but that night felt different. The rain was relentless, thunder rolling outside as the diner's neon lights flickered. The place was nearly empty, just two regulars in the corner and the cook in the back. Then, at exactly 9:17 p.m., the door swung open. In walked a man in a tailored suit, dripping with arrogance as much as with rain. His Rolex caught the fluorescent lights. His cologne filled the room before he even spoke. His name was Victor Hale, a wealthy real estate developer known in town for his ruthless business deals. And from the moment he sat down, Emily knew trouble was brewing. Victor didn't just order, he demanded. His tone cut like glass as he mocked Emily's voice when she repeated his order. He laughed when she accidentally dropped a fork on the floor. You know, he sneered loud enough for the whole diner to hear. Maybe if you studied harder, you wouldn't be stuck serving people like me. Emily's cheeks burned. She swallowed the tears, forcing a polite smile while scribbling down his order. The two regulars glanced over, uncomfortable, but too intimidated to intervene. Victor continued his performance, taking every opportunity to belittle her by complaining about the temperature of his coffee, accusing her of moving too slowly, even snapping his fingers at her like she was less than human. When Emily brought a steak to the table, he pushed the plate back with exaggerated disgust. Do you call this medium rare? My dog eats better than this. And then he smirked, pulled out his wallet, and threw a single crumpled dollar bill onto the table. The diner went silent. Emily froze, her trembling hands gripping the tray. Every insult she had endured that night condensed into that moment of humiliation. But what Victor didn't know was that he had just made a mistake that would cost him everything. Just as Emily turned away, something caught her eye. Victor's phone lit up on the table. A string of frantic messages appeared on the screen. Victor, where are you? They're looking for you. Don't go anywhere in public. It's not safe. The deal went bad. Someone's after you. Emily's breath caught in her throat. She didn't mean to stare, but the messages kept flashing. And then she noticed something else. A leather briefcase, tucked under Victor's chair, its latch slightly open. Inside, she glimpsed stacks of cash, tens of thousands of dollars. Victor noticed her glance. His expression shifted, arrogance melting into something sharper. Fear. See something you like, sweetheart? He hissed, snapping the briefcase shut. Emily stammered an apology and hurried back toward the counter. But the atmosphere inside the diner had changed. The regulars whispered nervously. The cook peeked out, sensing something was wrong. And then, headlights swept across the rain-soaked parking lot. A black SUV pulled in. Two shadowy figures stepped out, dressed in dark coats, moving with intention. Victor's face was drained of color. He grabbed his briefcase, fumbled with his phone, muttering curses under his breath. Emily stood frozen, her humiliation forgotten, replaced by a creeping dread. Whoever those men were, they weren't here for pie and coffee. The diner's bell jingled violently as the two strangers entered. Their eyes scanned the room, then locked on Victor. Mr. Hale, one of them said coldly. Victor's hand tightened on his briefcase. Emily's heart pounded in her chest. She realized, with terrifying clarity, that she was now caught in something far bigger than a customer's cruelty. And in the next few minutes, she would discover just how dangerous it could be. The diner went silent. Rain hammered the glass as the strangers moved closer to Victor's booth. Their presence was heavy, predatory. "Mr. Hale," one of them repeated, this time with a smirk. "We need to talk." Victor shifted uncomfortably. He tried to maintain his arrogant composure, but Emily saw the sweat glistening on his forehead. "I don't know you," Victor snapped, gripping the briefcase tighter. "You got the wrong man." But the strangers exchanged a knowing glance, and one of them slid into the booth across from him, blocking his escape. Emily's instinct screamed at her to step away, to retreat behind a counter and disappear. But her curiosity pinned her in place. She watched as Victor's massive power began to crumble. One of the regulars, an old truck driver, coughed nervously. "Everything all right here?" The taller stranger turned his head slowly. His glare was sharp enough to silence the room. Emily's breath quickened. She recognized the way predators assess prey. These men weren't just here for money. Something else was at play. Victor tried to bargain. He slid a few bills out of his briefcase, discreetly offering them under the table. But the man across from him shook his head. "It's not about the money, Hale. It's about what you took." Emily's stomach nodded. What could be so important that these men would risk storming into a public diner during a thunderstorm? Then suddenly Victor stood. His chair screeched against the tile. "I'm leaving," he snapped, clutching the briefcase. The second stranger blocked the door. The entire diner froze as the storm outside rattled the windows. And that's when Emily realized, if this turned violent, she was trapped too. Victor's voice broke into panic. "Listen, I didn't mean for it to go this far. I can fix it. I swear, just give me time." The taller man leaned closer, his voice a low growl. "You don't have time." Emily's pulse thundered in her ears. The cook ducked back into the kitchen, clearly wanting no part in this. The two regulars looked terrified, frozen in their seats. Victor turned desperately toward Emily. "You," he barked. "Call the police." Her hands trembled. She reached her phone behind the counter. But before she could dial, the shorter stranger stepped forward and ripped the cord from the wall. "No calls tonight." Emily gasped. They weren't just targeting Victor. They had cut off everyone's escape. The strangers closed in on Victor, their voices dropping into an ominous whisper Emily couldn't make out. But she saw Victor's face pale, terrified, begging. Then one of the men turned and locked eyes with Emily. For the first time since they walked in, she realized they knew she had seen the text. She knew about the briefcase. And that meant she wasn't just a bystander anymore. The taller man leaned across Victor's booth, his hands slamming down on the table. Dishes rattled. "You think you can take from us and walk away?" Victor stammered, his bravado gone. "I can pay. I'll give it all back. Just don't." Emily stood frozen behind the counter, her heart hammering. She wanted to disappear, but the shorter man's eyes never left her, ensuring she couldn't. The cook peeked from the kitchen, but the stranger's presence kept him locked in fear. The two regulars had quietly slipped out during the chaos, leaving Emily trapped. Victor, desperate, shoved the briefcase across the table. The taller man cracked it open just enough for Emily to see. Not just cash, but documents, contracts, photographs, and something that looked like a deed. "That's not everything," the man hissed. "Where's the rest?" Victor's eyes darted at Emily. For a terrifying moment, she realized he was about to throw her into the fire. "She knows," he shouted, pointing at her. "She saw my phone. She read the messages." Emily's blood went cold. Every eye turned to her. The taller man tilted his head, considering. Then, slowly, he rose from the booth and stepped toward her. Emily's back pressed against the counter as he loomed closer. "You saw something you shouldn't have, girl," he growled. Emily's breath shook, but before she could answer, Victor made his move. In one frantic motion, he snatched the briefcase and bolted for the door. The man by the exit wasn't expecting it. Victor shoved past him, slamming the door open into the storm. "Get him!" the taller man roared. Both strangers dashed outside, their coats whipping in the rain. For a moment, the diner was silent except for Emily's ragged breathing, then screeching tires, a deafening crash. Emily rushed to the window just in time to see Victor's luxury car smashed against a lamppost. It's crumpled like paper. The briefcase lay open on the wet asphalt, its contents scattering into the storm. The two men dragged Victor out, his suit soaked and face bloodied. His pleas were drowned by the rain. Emily gasped as one of them raised a gun, but instead of firing at Victor, they shot into the air. A warning, a promise. Then they shoved him to the ground, snatched only the documents, and disappeared into the black SUV. Victor was left broken, humiliated, sprawled in the gutter while his money bled into the storm drain. Minutes later, the police sirens wailed. But when officers stormed the scene, Emily realized the humiliation had flipped. The man who had belittled her, who had sneered and mocked her, was now on his knees crying, bruised, and begging for help. When the police questioned Emily, she finally found her voice. "He came in here like he owned the world," she said softly, "but he lost it all in minutes." Victor was arrested that night not just for reckless driving, but for fraud, embezzlement, and ties to criminal deals that those documents exposed. And Emily walked away shaken, but with her dignity intact. Victor thought humiliating a waitress would be just another forgettable act of cruelty, but the storm outside Rosie's diner had other plans. In the end, the man who mocked her was reduced to nothing, and Emily, she would never forget the night a customer's arrogance turned into his downfall. Please click subscribe and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching.